Is a piece of shit the whole shit, or just a part of it? The question, though framed in a deliberately crude manner, touches on an interesting philosophical question about parts and wholes, as well as the meanings we attach to objects, language, and even excrement. At first glance, the phrase, "a piece of shit," is a common vulgar expression, often used to describe something or someone considered to be of low value or bad quality. However, if we strip away its colloquial meaning and focus on the literal interpretation, we begin to encounter deeper metaphysical questions about parts and wholes. Is a piece of something an adequate representation of the whole? Does it retain the essence of the whole, or merely function as a fragmented component? Defining a piece and the whole. To understand whether a piece of something can be considered the whole or just a part, we must first clarify what we mean by a piece. In ordinary language, a piece refers to a fragment or portion of a larger entity. It is not typically the entirety of the object, but rather a subset of it. This is the case when we think of objects like bread, fabric, or cake. A piece of bread, for example, still possesses the same properties as the loaf it came from, but it no longer constitutes the entirety of that loaf. Applying this idea to excrement, or shit, raises the same kind of distinction. A piece of excrement may retain the physical and chemical properties of the whole, but is still only a part of what was once a larger mass. Therefore, a piece of shit, in its most literal sense, is indeed just a fragment of the whole. It lacks the totality of the original form, whether that original form was larger or represented a complete system of biological waste. Does a piece represent the essence of the whole? Now, one could argue that even though a piece is just a part, it can still represent the essential nature of the whole. In this way, a piece of bread can represent the taste, texture, and substance of the entire loaf. In the same way, a piece of excrement could be said to represent the essence of the whole shit, because it embodies the same biological processes and materials. In this sense, a piece of shit is as much shit as the entirety of the waste it originated from. The molecular composition, smell, texture, and other qualities remain consistent, so the part can represent the whole in this limited, qualitative sense. However, the issue becomes more complex when we apply it to abstract uses of language. The phrase "a piece of shit" is rarely used literally. It functions more as an idiomatic expression to describe something that is fundamentally bad or worthless. Here we are no longer discussing a physical part of a physical whole, but rather using piece to amplify the judgment of the subject being described. In this context, the word piece works to suggest that the object in question is not only bad in part, but wholly deficient or repugnant. So while the literal meaning of the phrase implies part of a whole, its metaphorical usage conveys a more holistic sense of negativity. The linguistic play between parts and wholes. In exploring this topic, we also encounter the role that language plays in shaping how we think about parts and wholes. In everyday speech, people use piece to convey different meanings, often depending on the context. In some cases, it implies a small portion of something. In other cases, it may suggest a more abstract or metaphorical interpretation. This duality reflects how flexible language can be when dealing with concepts of fragmentation versus totality. For example, when someone says, "This computer is a piece of shit," they are not suggesting that part of the computer is bad and the rest is fine. Rather, the use of piece implies that the entire object is being condemned, not just a portion of it. This linguistic flexibility allows people to express complex ideas using simple words, but it also blurs the lines between the literal and figurative meanings of piece and whole. Philosophical implications. Holism versus reductionism. On a more abstract level, the question of whether a piece of something is the same as the whole invites us to engage with philosophical concepts of holism and reductionism. Holism asserts that a system or entity is greater than the sum of its parts, suggesting that the whole carries unique properties that are not reducible to its individual components. In contrast, reductionism posits that a complex system can be understood fully by analyzing its parts. In the case of a piece of shit, reductionism would argue that this piece, while only a part of the whole, still carries all the essential properties of shit. Holism, on the other hand, might contend that the whole shit is more than just its parts. It may have a context, function, or meaning, however unsavory, that is lost when fragmented into pieces. Thus, holism would see a piece as insufficient to represent the full reality of the whole. Conclusion: the whole shit and the part of it. So is a piece of shit the whole shit or just a part of it? The answer depends on how you define piece and how you view the relationship between parts and wholes. Literally, a piece of shit is just a part of the whole, retaining the same properties but lacking the totality of the original mass. However, figuratively and linguistically, the phrase "a piece of shit" often serves as a way to condemn something in its entirety, blurring the distinction between parts and wholes. Ultimately, the question invites reflection on how we understand physical objects, language, and the interplay between the literal and the metaphorical. Whether a piece is sufficient to represent the whole may depend less on the object itself and more on the context in which it is used and the perspective we choose to adopt.